Well, here we are, folks, on the cusp of the 2025 Monaco Grand Prix, and there's a real buzz in the air. Formula One has decided to give this classic race a proper shake-up. For this year's event, a new rule is in place. Every driver must make a minimum of 2 pit stops during the race. This isn't just about changing tyres for the sake of it. It means they will have to use at least 3 different sets of tyres throughout the Grand Prix. It's a bold move, one designed to throw a strategic cat amongst the pigeons in a race that, let's be honest, can sometimes be a bit of a procession. The aim is simple: more action, more unpredictability. Now, why has Formula One decided to implement such a significant change specifically for Monaco? The answer lies in the very nature of this iconic street circuit. It's tight, it's twisty, and overtaking is notoriously difficult, almost impossible, some would say, unless there's a big performance difference or a mistake. This often leads to races where track position is king, and once the order is set after the first lap and the initial pit stops, it can become a high-speed parade. This new 2-stop mandate is a direct attempt to break that pattern, to force teams into making more strategic calls and potentially creating more chances for positions to change hands throughout the 78 laps. The Monaco Grand Prix has a glamour and history that is unparalleled in motorsport, a jewel in the crown. However, even its most ardent fans would admit that the on-track spectacle hasn't always matched the glittering backdrop. For years, we've seen teams opt for a conservative one-stop strategy, trying to make their tyres last as long as possible to maintain that all-important track position. This often meant long stints where drivers were managing their pace rather than pushing to the absolute limit. The authorities clearly feel that compelling more pit stops will inject some much-needed dynamism, forcing drivers and strategists to think on their feet and react to a more fluid race situation. This new regulation fundamentally alters the traditional approach to racing in the Principality. Gone, potentially, are the days of that single, carefully timed pit stop, defining the race's outcome for many. Instead, teams will now have to factor in 2 mandatory visits to their pit crew. This immediately opens up a wider range of strategic windows and variables. Will they pit early to try and undercut? Will they go long on a stint hoping for a safety car? It adds layers of complexity, and that's precisely what the sport wants to see here. It's a gamble, but one that could pay off handsomely in terms of entertainment for us all. To really understand the impact of this new Monaco rule, we need to look at the standard Formula One tyre regulations for a dry race. Typically, drivers are required to use at least 2 different slick tyre compounds during a Grand Prix. For example, they might start on the medium compound and then switch to the hard compound, or vice versa. This can usually be achieved with just 1 pit stop, and that's what we see at most races. The rule ensures some strategic variation, but it doesn't force multiple stops if a team can manage their tyres well enough to only come in once. This has been the norm for quite some time now. The new Monaco-specific rule for 2025 is a significant departure from this standard procedure, quite a big step. Mandating 2 pit stops means drivers must use 3 sets of tyres. If the race remains dry, they must still use at least 2 different specifications of slick weather tyres across these 3 sets. So, for instance, a driver might use soft, medium soft, or medium hard soft. This immediately throws out the well-worn one-stop playbook that teams have perfected for Monaco. It's designed to force more variables into the equation, making tyre degradation and pit stop timing even more critical than before on these unforgiving streets. Now, what happens if the infamous Monaco weather decides to play its part? If rain affects the race, the situation becomes even more interesting. Drivers can then use a combination of slick tyres, intermediate tyres, or full wet tyres to meet the new 2-stop, 3-set requirement. This flexibility is crucial, as conditions on the Riviera can change incredibly quickly. The rule is designed to adapt, ensuring that even if the heavens open, the core principle of multiple pit stops and tyre changes remains, adding another layer of strategic headache or opportunity for the teams on the pit wall. They will be watching those weather radars very closely indeed. To ensure teams are fully equipped for any wet weather scenario, Formula One has also decided that each driver will receive an additional set of full wet tyres for the Monaco weekend. This brings their total allocation to 3 sets of the blue sidewalled full wets. This is a sensible precaution, making sure that the rule can be followed even if we experience extreme downpours. It shows the organizers are serious about this two-stop mandate, rain or shine. If the race is dry and drivers don't need inters or wets, the obligation to use at least 2 different slick compounds across their 3 stints still stands, keeping the strategic element alive. When you introduce a rule as significant as this, you need to have clear consequences for anyone who doesn't play by it. The FIA has outlined some pretty hefty penalties for non-compliance with this new Monaco tyre rule, as stated in Article 30.5 of the sporting regulations. If a driver fails to use at least 3 sets of tyres during the race, and the race runs its full course or isn't unduly shortened, the penalty is severe disqualification from the race results. That's a massive blow for any driver or team, effectively wiping out their entire weekend's work. So you can be sure everyone will be paying very close attention. The regulations also cover what happens if the race in Monaco is suspended and, for whatever reason, cannot be restarted. In such a scenario, time penalties will be applied. If a driver didn't use at least 2 specifications of dry weather tyres when required, in a dry race scenario that was cut short, or if they didn't use at least 3 sets of tyres of any specification, 30 seconds will be added to their elapsed race time. And it gets even tougher. An additional 30 seconds, making it a total of 60 seconds, will be slapped onto the time of any driver who only used 1 single set of tyres during the shortened race. These are not insignificant penalties. So what do the stars of the show, the drivers themselves, think about this? Max Verstappen, Red Bull's reigning 4-time world champion, has welcomed the change. He mentioned that he expects it to add some spice to the Monaco Grand Prix. He pointed out that it could make strategies quite straightforward if everyone does the same thing, or it could become completely crazy due to the timing of safety cars and the critical strategic calls that will need to be made under pressure. Max believes it will create more variability compared to a typical one-stop race where drivers often just focus on consistency after their single stop. Pierre Gasly, driving for Alpine, also sees the potential in this new regulation. He commented that it introduces opportunities and unknowns, which he feels should be embraced by everyone in the sport. While he's not entirely sure of the exact impact it will have on the race dynamic, he does believe that qualifying will remain absolutely crucial, as it always is in Monaco. However, he anticipates that the mandated 2 stops will open up the possibility for new and perhaps unexpected strategies to unfold during the Grand Prix itself, potentially mixing up the order more than we've seen in recent years. The fundamental idea behind this new 2-stop rule is to force teams and drivers out of their strategic comfort zones. For too long, Monaco has been a race where the optimal strategy was often quite clear. Qualify as high as possible, make 1 pit stop at the right moment, and then manage the tyres and track position to the checkered flag. This new mandate for at least 3 different sets of tyres and 2 stops throws that conservative approach out the window. It compels action. It means teams can't just settle into a rhythm. They'll have to be more proactive, more aggressive, and perhaps take more risks than they usually would here. One of the most exciting prospects is how the timing of these mandatory pit stops will interact with other race variables, particularly the infamous Monaco safety cars or virtual safety cars. A well-timed pit stop under a safety car can catapult a driver up the order, while an ill-timed one can ruin their race. With 2 stops now required, there are more opportunities for these dramatic swings in fortune. Teams will be constantly recalculating, trying to judge the perfect moment to bring their drivers in, weighing the benefits of fresh tyres against the risk of losing precious track position on a circuit where it's so hard to regain. This rule change undeniably cranks up the strategic element of the Monaco Grand Prix. It's no longer just about tyre preservation for 1 long stint. Now, strategists will be earning their money, deciding not just when to make those 2 stops, but also which tyre compounds to use for each of the 3 stints. Do they go for an aggressive strategy with softer, faster tires for shorter stints, or do they try to make one compound last longer to give them more flexibility around the pit stop windows? These are the kinds of decisions that can make or break a race, and we're going to see a lot more of them. Ultimately, the hope is that this new two-stop rule will inject a much-needed dose of unpredictability and genuine excitement into one of Formula One's most iconic and glamorous events. While Monaco will always be a unique challenge due to its narrow layout, making overtaking a rare commodity, these enforced strategic variations should, in theory, create more talking points and more potential for thrilling racing. It's a bold experiment, and the entire F1 world will be watching with bated breath on Sunday, May 25th, 2025, to see if it delivers the more dynamic spectacle everyone is hoping for on these legendary streets.